Beneath the almond tree. On the north coast of Jamaica, where the turquoise sea kisses the white sand, there sat a small fishing village named Port Ansel. Life there moved with the tide, slow, gentle, and full of little joys. Mornings smelled of fresh bread and salt on the air, afternoons were warm and golden, and nights belonged to the rhythm of the waves. At the far end of the beach stood an old almond tree, its wide branches stretching like open arms. Lovers met there, children played in its shade, and elders sat beneath it to tell stories. One warm evening, under that very tree, Marcia and David made a promise. Marcia had the kind of beauty that didn't need decoration, smooth brown skin, eyes like deep water, and a laugh that rolled as easy as the tide. Many men in the village had tried to court her, but she had chosen David. David wasn't the loudest or the most charming. He was steady, hard-working, and honest. While other young men bragged about what they would do, David showed her what he could do. He rose before dawn, worked his fishing nets, and sold his catch in the market. Every coin he earned, he saved in a little tin box under his bed. One evening, with the sea quiet and the stars bright above them, David told her, "Marcia, one day I'm going to buy you a house on the hill. You'll wake up every morning to the sound of the sea, and you'll never have to work yourself weary again. That's my promise." Marcia had smiled then, her hand in his. "And I will be waiting for you, David. No matter how long it takes." Months later, a man named Leon arrived in Port Ansel. He was nothing like the fishermen or farmers. Leon wore crisp linen shirts, shoes that never touched mud, and gold rings that caught the sunlight. He said he was in the village for business opportunities, but it wasn't long before people noticed his eyes often following Marcia. At first, he kept it light, a polite "good morning" in the market, a compliment on her dress, a joke about the weather. But soon, he began buying fish from David's stall just so he could linger and speak to her. Leon spoke of Kingston with the skill of a man painting a picture. He told Marcia of houses with tall gates, parties where the music never stopped, clothes from overseas, and beaches so white they hurt your eyes. "Marcia," he said one afternoon, "you're too beautiful for a life this small. You belong where the world can see you shine." David was out at sea more often now, working harder than ever to save for their future. Leon, meanwhile, had time to bring her silk scarves, perfume from France, and sweet mangoes from the city. Temptation takes root. At first, Marcia refused Leon's gifts. But he persisted, always with that smile. "Is just a little token. No harm in it," he would say. One Saturday night, Leon invited her to a dance in the next parish. What would David say, she asked. Leon leaned closer. "You're not doing anything wrong, darling. Just a bit of fun. Life is too short to spend all of it waiting." She went. The music was alive, the lights warm, and the rum sweet. She laughed with Leon until her cheeks hurt. That night, the almond tree in Port Ansel stood empty. Over the following weeks, Marcia's heart began to drift. She still saw David, but her eyes didn't light up the same way. Leon's words echoed in her mind, "Why wait?" One evening, Leon asked her outright, "Come to Kingston with me. I'll give you a life you never imagined. No more scraping by, no more long nights alone." David's house on the hill was still years away. Leon's life was now. She said yes. The first months were dazzling. Marcia lived in an apartment with a balcony over the glowing city. She wore silk dresses and gold earrings. Leon took her to parties, art shows, and beaches she had only dreamed of. Friends back in Port Ansel whispered about her glamorous new life. But the shine began to fade. Leon stayed out later and later, sometimes not coming home at all. The gifts slowed, replaced by excuses. Marcia began to notice other women, younger, flashier, laughing with him at parties. Bills stacked on the kitchen table. The rent for the apartment was harder to pay. The sweet words grew short, and one night, after a bitter argument, Leon told her flatly, "It's over. The city lights no longer felt warm. They felt cold and far away. Back in Port Ansel, David took his heartbreak and turned it into fuel. He fished harder, but he also thought smarter. He began buying goods from Kingston to sell with his catch: flour, sugar, tools. People came to him for more than fish. His stall grew into a shop. He hired 2 young men from the village, giving them steady work. Soon, he was supplying other towns along the coast. One Saturday morning, a woman named Elena came into the shop for flour. She had moved to Port Ansel to care for her aunt. She wasn't flashy, but she was warm and steady, like the sun after rain. She often brought David homemade coconut drops or a thermos of ginger tea. She listened when he spoke, and one day he found himself telling her about the house on the hill, a dream he had once put away. "You'll get there," she said simply. "I can see it. The house on the hill." Years passed, and David's shop thrived. At last, he withdrew his savings and bought the land overlooking the village, high enough to see the almond tree far below. He built a wide, airy house with a veranda and a garden of mango and breadfruit trees. Under the almond tree, he and Elena exchanged vows. This time, the promise was kept. One rainy afternoon, Marcia came back to Port Ansel, suitcase in hand. Kingston had not been kind to her. She saw David's shop, busy, well-stocked, with employees greeting customers. "Who owns this place?" she asked a passerby. "David," the woman replied. "Lives up on the hill now, with his wife." Marcia climbed the hill. She found David on the veranda with Elena, laughing as they shared a cup of tea. "David," she said softly, "I made a mistake." David's gaze was steady. "Yes, Marcia. You did. And I thank God I didn't let that mistake keep me down." He turned back to Elena. "Come, love, let's check on the shop before sunset." They walked away together, leaving Marcia alone in the wind, staring at the life she had thrown away. That evening, David and Elena sat on their veranda, looking out over the sea. The almond tree stood far below, a reminder of the past, but David no longer felt the ache. He had risen, not from what he lost, but from what he chose to build. Moral: betrayal can break you, or it can be the fire that forges you into something stronger.